Welcome everybody to the Hot Take. This is episode 6. We're with Andrea Slobodien, or are we doing Andy?
We can go with Andi. That's my Slack name anyway.
Awesome. She's from San Francisco. She was a very dedicated objective runner for a long time, but now she's queening for one of the most exciting teams at GDC, and she's been
Yay.
making a name for herself in the queen role at Phoenix and at SF at regular league nights. So, Andy, how are you feeling?
Pretty good. Like a week and a half away from GDC. So I'm just like praying that my arm muscles don't die on me.
That's the constant concern for a queen, for sure.
Yep.
So let's just get to know you a bit. Where are you from and what do you do?
So originally I'm from Orange County and I moved up to SF about 4 years ago after college. And now I'm a product manager. So I work exclusively on music products. Right now I'm at a really cool company called Smule, and I work on tools for our creators and musicians.
Awesome, awesome. And so speaking of creators and musicians, I know you're a singer yourself, and
Yeah.
I hear you're in a new band.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's it been going?
It's pretty good. Yeah, I started a band a year ago. We're called Ampersand. We've played two shows since we formed. So we started working on a set list about a year ago, and then we just had our most recent concert about a month and a half ago. It was like really exciting and makes me want to perform more. So trying to like launch our website and be legit, and yeah.
So do you with your set list, is it mostly original songs or are you taking songs from specific bands?
It's all original. I mean, we do covers to like make people happy because people love covers, but all the songs that we perform are written mostly by me, actually. I've been a singer-songwriter since I was like 5 years old. It's like
Wow.
my little secret hobby that I've always had.
Jeez.
So, yeah.
Did you ever like do that with parents or friends when you were writing songs or?
Oh, yeah, yeah. When I was younger, I would always like try to start little bands with my friends and stuff. And then I just used to record like songs on GarageBand, and I was like really big into like MySpace music and like Pure Volume, and I was always like an internet child. So yeah, yeah. But like a week ago, I went home and got to like play. My dad has a band too,
Mhm.
so he's in like a rock. They do like rock covers. And I went home last weekend to his band's gig, and I got to sing with them. So that was really fun too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you say that you've always been an internet child. Did you ever play games online, or did you just is Killer Queen the first game you've played?
Oh man. So I never thought of myself as a gamer. Like, I guess in hindsight, when I think about all the games I played as a kid, then I probably was a little bit of a gamer because I used to be like, well, okay, when I was really young, my older brother and sister got me into Super Nintendo. So like I would spend all weekend trying to beat Donkey Kong Country like over and over. I still love playing that game. Um, and then as I got older, I developed a really strange addiction to like the flash game Helicopter, which I actually forgot about this addiction until I started playing Killer Queen and realized that like warrior flying is so much like helicopter, and that there was like this unused muscle memory still in me that I could apply to it.
Yeah.
And then I also had this crazy like Tetris addiction in college. Like I would play in lecture halls and I could actually hear people behind me in class just like reacting to my gameplay because I would play like at such a high level. But I would say Killer Queen is the first game like in which I actively identified as a gamer, which is weird. It's like probably the most addicted I've ever been to a video game.
Yeah. Well, welcome
Mm.
to the struggle.
Yeah.
I played League of Legends, I think, for 3 years beforehand, and it was just, oof, too much.
Yeah.
But now I just spend all my time playing Killer Queen. So,
Okay,
uh,
at least it's social.
yeah, that's true. It is the toxic, the toxic. The community is a little bit better. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to roll into some of our audience questions. You said you're a product manager, and Josh B is actually asking a bit about if you were BumbleBear, what would you be doing right now?
Oh shit. Um, well, first of all, I got to give them props because they're super lean and scrappy, and I think like being a product manager at a big company is really different from being at a startup. And having been at a startup, I know how hard it is. Like when your power users are always requesting things of you, and there's like a million reasons why it's not a good idea that relates to like your future roadmap. And I know it's hard to take all that feedback. So I give them props for taking any of our feedback. But I will say, like, one thing I've started noticing lately is like the barrier to queening is so high. And I think part of that is that military is still sort of like an over-biased win condition. And so they've made steps towards like making berries more viable, for example. I think that's worked out pretty well. I think most people would agree that like adding those extra ledges on day and dusk have been helpful, or like the extra hole on dusk. But I think just continuing to make those conditions more viable and like giving drones a little bit more power in the game can sort of offset some of the imbalance towards military. And it will also mean that there's like less pressure on the queen to be a god. And so the barrier to new queens is a lot lower.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess there's a lot of ways we can go from here, but I'll just get one more audience question out of the way from Andrew Quang. What will be your signature pose or pop off? Like whenever you get that big play or you win that big game, what is Andi doing?
To be honest, like every time I get a crazy kill, like in a high stress game situation, I feel like when I'm looking at footage afterwards, my face is just like I can't believe it worked. So I think I wish I had like more style with my pop off. Maybe like when I'm cockier, I'll have a better signature move. But for now, I think it'll just be like a look of total shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be looking for it at GDC. Coming up in, what is it now? 7, 8, 9 days? A week and a few?
Not soon enough. Yeah.
Not soon enough? I'm not ready yet. So hype up GDC. Tell me why we should all be excited with SF's big tournament coming up.
Oh my God. I mean, I don't know what's more exciting, like the city of SF or the tournament, because I know like our SF, like the tournament organizers and stuff, like Brian and Jeremy have been like working their asses off on getting accommodations and making fun plans. And like the trophies are fucking sick. You guys are going to love them. Yeah, I mean, this is the first year that SF has 3 sets of Killer Queen cabinets. And that's not even counting the private cabinets that are starting to pop up like at Airbnb and Google. And there's just like so many places to play Killer Queen, and as a result, so many new players from SF that are just like waiting to shine at their first big tournament.
Yeah.
We also have a ton of scenes coming in, like a lot of really cool last minute teams like yours, and a lot of mixed scene teams, which I think having a tournament with a high volume of mixed scene teams just gets people cheering for everybody. Like you get to enjoy that like communal feeling of like watching finals together and like not even knowing who to be happier for. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm super excited. Not just for the tournament itself, but I'm really excited to play with Tiana and Mike again. It's going to be a fun time. Hopefully we get to play you.
I hope so.
Yeah, because your team is very exciting. And I want to ask one more audience question before we jump into that too deep. From Amar, how do you build your KQ teams?
Oh man, I think building a team is obviously really important. I think especially like as a new queen, looking for teammates that complement my play style. And so to give an example, when I was getting ready to go to Phoenix, my team formation was actually really difficult because initially I was the only queen that was going to Phoenix. And so I had to choose between everyone that like wanted to go to Phoenix and had this like pressure. And then a lot more people like stepped up and wanted to queen. And so when I finally had my pick of 4, we ended up having 3 of them drop out. And so I just had Felix and pulled together like Tony, he's the Deathball creator, and he ended up moving out to El Cater, but he came in for Cactus Clash, and Felix and Tony work amazingly together. So that was great. And then my last 2 teammates, though, they were just like, it was Paul from Minneapolis and then Alex, who's a newer player from Portland. And I had no idea what their play style would be like. And I was just, rather than like being able to choose for a certain play style, I focused instead on aligning a strategy to like what I knew about the team and what I didn't know, and just getting us to play as well as we possibly could together, and just focusing on like team communication as soon as we all met each other in Phoenix. So I would say for that team selection process I wasn't able to be super strategic, but the results were still that I was really proud of my team. They played so well. For GDC though, this team, It actually started off as like a drunk joke at BB2. So it was after the tournament was over, and Josh and Dre were just like, I'm so fucking sick of queening. I never want to queen again. And like, this was the moment that I knew I could convince them to be on my team, because they were drunk and vulnerable and hated queening. And so I was like, hey, why don't you guys be on my team, and we could form a team of queens that are too tired of queening, and you guys can teach me in the meantime. And then they drunkenly agreed to it. And then like a month later, Dre actually called my bluff, and he's like, yeah, so I'm like going to GDC. We're doing this, right? I was like, oh shit, okay. And so the last two teammates that we got were BK from New York, who I think you might know him.
No.
He's a pretty good queen. You should try playing with him.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Bert Warenga from Chicago. So Dre was able to convince Bert, and Bert and BK were both going to be in town for GDC. So I think I just got really, really lucky. So I was able to form a full team of former BB2 queens who are going on a little vacation from queening for a tournament.
Well, and you say former BB2 queens, but like I want to point out they were all in the knockout round, and two of them were in the top four. So this is a pretty, there's a lot of queen talent on this team, yourself included.
Thanks.
But Woody wanted to know, with all this queen talent around you, is there anything, besides winning first place, is there anything else you're wanting to get out of playing with all of these different queens?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that I've already gotten a lot out of having them on my team. Like, just we have a group chat on Facebook Messenger where we've been chatting for like the last few months about GDC, and they're really supportive, and they give me a lot of mentorship and advice. It's a place where I can just ask like dumb queen questions, and like at some points Dre has even gone through like my league night footage and like annotated it with feedback. He's like made feedback videos for me. So I think just getting like the coaching and mentorship from four very talented but very different queens has given me sort of like queen boot camp. So I'm just like getting, all different perspectives about scenarios. And yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better team in that sense. Like they're teaching me so much, and I'm just like taking it all in as fast as I can.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd attribute your rapid growth to? Because you're one of the like quickest growing queens in the national scene right now. What else can you kind of point to besides obviously working your ass off?
Yeah, well, I think working my ass off is kind of it though. Like I live 2 blocks away from Brewcade, like literally 2, like maybe 1.5. I'm there all the time. Like I used to have to wear a wrist guard to work because I was like playing Killer Queen like every single day, and now I've cut back to like only a few times a week. But I'm not only putting in the hours, which I think is important, but I'm also trying to be as effective as I can with those hours. I think taking feedback is super important, and having a learning and growth mindset is the most important thing you can do as a new queen trying to learn at a fast rate. Like, and I knew going into GDC that that I was not as good of a queen as any of my teammates, and also as I wasn't as good as a lot of the queens that we'll be going up against. But I knew that between when I decided to queen at GDC and now, that the thing I could optimize was my growth trajectory. Like I can learn at a faster rate than most people, and I can like leverage that to the best of my abilities. And then the other thing that I focus on a lot is like interpersonal relationships with teammates. Like I think I actually learned this from Alyssa. So Alyssa from Portland was my roommate at BB2, and we just like would stay up talking about like life and Killer Queen mostly. And I really loved the way, like, so I played a few pickup games with her at BB2, and I loved playing with her because anytime I got a kill, even if it was a total fluke, she would like look at me and thank me and then continue. And at the start of every game, she would say, "What do you guys need?" And that was it. And I love the way that she plays on kind of like an emotional level, but she's also got these like crazy skills. And so I think I've taken some lessons from her as well. And I try to make, like you can only get so good at tech. Like tech is something that you practice and you like reinforce the muscle memory. But I think there's a lot of other skills that you can get good at in parallel. And so that allows you to improve across more dimensions with the same amount of time.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because you can only get so many hours on the cab.
Yeah.
Beyond that reflection. and that kind of development is strong for sure.
Yeah.
So we've got a question from Dan, talking about your transition kind of from objective runner to queen. And let me just go ahead and grab it. What did you focus on in making the jump between these two, and what are you still focusing on?
Yeah, so to like give a little more background info, like I was a diehard snail pretty much until Minnesota Mean knocked my team set abs free out of BB2. And I remember like getting off the cab and Reed, another SF guy, was like, Andy, there's free play on all these other cabs. And it was all the like kind of broken cabs in the corner that like weren't being used while the tournament was still running. And so I just decided like, I'm going to queen. Like I've always loved doing it like as kind of a joke. And I had queened at like newbie tournaments. So I wasn't like a totally new queen, but the cool thing about like running snail is that you learn to be really, really jukey. And I mean, I watched so much footage of Rob from New York. Like that was like my hashtag snail goals. It was to like be as bumpy and aggro as him. And so having come from this like super random, aggressive, confusing play style as a drone, and then like going on to queen on this like broken cabinet, I realized like I could use the randomness to my advantage. Like even the randomness of like not knowing when the cabinet was going to like drop inputs helped me be just like a much jukier queen. And after that, I was like, I'm never going to stop queening. So like I got back to SF, and that was shortly afterwards, like the patch for that like decreased the tapping threshold was released. And so when we upgraded our cabs, I think you actually came to SF at that point. Like the cabs were like a little bit laggy. Like we didn't quite nail the update on the first try. And as a result, I got to like work with that randomness again. And I was able to kill a lot of our like top queens just because the randomness and like unpredictability like didn't make me uncomfortable, because I didn't yet rely on like certain queen tech. I was just sort of juking around, like acting like I was a snail rider, but actually with the queen's hover, right? And so yeah, I would say like so if you can, as a new queen, if you can make your start at a time when like the core mechanics of the game are changing, that means that you have a huge advantage, because you're just learning everything for the first time, while a lot of the top queens are having to relearn tech that they've like ground into their muscle memory. And so the disadvantage gap is a little smaller. And so I would say take advantage of any of those opportunities when there are big updates in the game, to like try a new position, because you have a little bit of a head start. And then yeah, the other thing is I just always try to play with like people who are better than me. Like having been Josh's snail runner, I had a lot of time to like look at the map and study what was happening at a high level. And so just all those hours of essentially like watching the game from the bottom of the map allowed me to understand the strategy by the time I was ready to start queening. So I already had sort of an intuition for like gate control and map awareness.
Yeah, no, for sure. And let's see, he's got a follow-up question for this. Is there anything else besides this randomness, this aggression, the gate controlling? Is there anything else that you've brought with you from objective running? And is there anything that you had to kind of just leave behind that doesn't carry over between the roles?
I mean, I would say actually one skill that's like surprisingly helpful, having been like, I would argue, one of the top drones, or at least practicing drone skills at the top level, right? I know like there's pretty much no drone that can out juke me. Like I'm able to kill a lot of like speed drones that are trying to get up as warriors, just by knowing like what route they're going to take and like plucking them out of thin air. And I actually like really enjoy doing it. Like feels good to like just dive on a drone who like thinks he's so sneaky and then watch his fairy go flying. And so I think, yeah, I've gotten a much better sense for like how to kill drones and for what routes they're taking. And that's really helpful, especially when I have lockout, because yeah, I would 1v1 a drone any day. I mean, I don't know anyone that wouldn't, but I'm also I'm a lot stronger against drone bumps. Like having been the drone that's always trying to destabilize the queen, I mean, I don't want to like jinx myself, knock on wood, but I rarely just get like stupidly bumped into like a dumb death. I usually can surprise drones with quick turnarounds, and I see them as real threats. I think a lot of players underestimate the power of drones, and the fact that I don't has sometimes allowed me to stay alive longer in games, especially in famine games.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, I mean, I'm really excited to see this queen in person finally. It's a shame we don't get to see the objective running anymore, but you got those roots as what people are calling the second wave of San Francisco. And so I just want to kind of chat about the community a bit. What's different from when you started playing to now in what some people are calling kind of the third wave of San Francisco's history?
Yeah. So when I first started playing Killer Queen, yeah, I definitely embraced like being a newbie and just like the only way that I could get onto a good team when I first joined was like by being willing to run snail and by being willing to do it at such a high level that like these top teams had no choice but to, you know, take an objective runner rather than just like, I think when I first joined, like SF was sort of like greedy warriors, like let's just kill everything, full mill all the time. And now that our scene is growing, like I think we have a diversity of different kinds of players and different skill sets. It also means that we're able to send people to travel tournaments more often because it's, you know, not like the same 5 or 10 people forming super teams every time. Like we're able to send a lot of people out to these tournaments to like get learnings and then bring them back. And it just sort of like raises the bar for everyone. But I think that like being a second wave player, like it's not too late to try to get good. I even think that a lot of our third wave players, like some of them, there's a GDC team right now, Dan's team, that they all joined like I think in the last 6 months, and they're so freaking good, and their growth trajectory is like just as fast, if not faster, than mine. So I think like the bigger your scene gets, the higher of a bar you set for everybody.
Yeah, and so another question about the community. Do you think it's more beneficial to have super teams where you've got, you know, just a great conglomeration of talent on one spot, or do you think you should spread them out with new players on each team?
Yeah, I mean, this is like such a sensitive topic. I don't know if this is sensitive in all cities, but in SF, like when we were getting ready for BB2 last year, team formation was really difficult. And I think in the end, we ended up spreading our talent across a few different teams. And as a result, like none of our teams were top seeded going into BB2. It was kind of frustrating. And at the same time, I think we're ready to try the super team experiment and see if it works. Like I think SF has a lot of talent, and I think it's worth it for us to make a super team. So we're actually sending a team to Coronation. I'm not on it, but I think it's got like Jeremy as queen, plus like Josh, Felix, Sean Kelly, and Steve. I hope I got the names all right. And they're all so good, and they're all so specialized. And I know that their team, them being on a team together I'm excited to see how they fare against like some of the top New York teams, because I've always thought like SF is totally underrated, and that like on an average league night, like there's so much talent that we don't always get to like show off when we go to tournaments.
Yeah.
So the other reason I'm excited about them forming a super team is that like this means that if I want a queen at Coronation and if I can pull a team together, that I get to practice every single week against a fucking amazing team, which is going to make me a much better player. It's going to make my team, it's going to force us to rise up and to try to be at the level of those like, you know, first wave players that have had a lot more time to get good. Yeah. So actually I'm not anti-super team as long as like everyone sees it as like a growth and learning opportunity. You know, super teams will form, but I think it raises the bar for everyone. And as a fellow tryhard, I respect the desire to, you know, like try to win tournaments, and I'm excited that I get to practice against that super team. So
yeah, and so a lot of critics of the super team model say if you have a super team that is, you know, hypothetically multiple skill levels higher than the next team, this next team isn't going to have a chance to really learn much because they'll just get boom, wiped, and then locked out. And then, you know, what are the learning opportunities there? What would you say to the people who are against this super team?
Yeah, I mean, I think if every game is like boom, wipe, locked out, then it's not really like, I don't think either side is going to be learning much. So I think like having a super team has to also be coupled with like a scene committing to learning and growing, right? And wanting other people to learn and grow. I think that like if my coronation team ends up getting locked out every time by Jeremy's super team, I don't think they're going to enjoy that much either. They'll probably want to shuffle the teams a little, if nothing else, so that they can challenge themselves. Right. So it's sort of like mutually assured destruction or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and so there's a lot of different ways to, I guess, approach that. And other scenes are trying different things, and I guess we'll see at Bumble Bash 3 which one wins out.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned that you've played with Josh B before, of course, at Bumble Bash 2, and now playing again with him at GDC. What's brought you back to playing with Josh B, over and over again?
Yeah. I mean, Josh, so this is probably going to be like the most hot take moment of the interview, because I know Josh is like a controversial character in Slack, but I'll just say for the record, I'm actually like a really big fan of Josh. I think he's been a huge sponsor and support for me as I've been trying to grow as a queen. When we were forming our BB2 team, for BB2, he took 2 new players, Scott and I, and then he took Drew, who was not at that point like the polished speed warrior that he is today. And then he had Alex Jasperson, who's, obviously you guys are all gods in Google New York, so we're just lucky that he chose to move to San Francisco and play with us. But yeah, and he took a pretty like mixed team and was willing to spend a lot of time coaching us all on like the best strategy for our role. And I learned so much in the road to BB2. Like when we were first playing against the other SF teams, we were losing. We had not found our stride as a team. And then as time went on, I think we learned how to work together both interpersonally and tactically and strategically. So I just really loved that process. I felt like I was learning and growing the fastest while playing with Josh. I mean, he's a tough critic. Like he'll be yelling at you the entire game. Like he's literally like, it sounds so mean at first. Like it used to hurt my feelings to play with him. But like the thing is, like all his feedback like was 100% right. And also after practicing together, he also realized that like he learned a lot about how to deliver feedback and how to, it doesn't matter if you're right, if your teammates don't want to hear what you're saying, right? And I think he learned a lot about how to communicate with his team, and we just developed a really good like working relationship that way. And so he and Jeremy play very differently. I know I actually did ask Jeremy as well if he was interested in being on my GDC team like after nationals, and he was kind of like, no, like I'm gonna be a queen at GDC and like, build a super team. So like he did that, and they're gonna be great. Josh just started playing a lot more like him, and so he knows exactly how to cover me as a speed warrior. Now he's been vanilla warrioring for me at the last few league nights, and he's just very like, he's a great anchor because he knows what I'm going to do because he taught me to do it. And so now I'm actually trying to become sort of my own flavor of queen and develop some of my own strategies as I go. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's been, so I would say like I probably do play the most with Josh, and it shows a lot in my playing, but I also play a lot with Felix, who's been covering for Dre during league nights. And
yeah,
I learn a lot from Felix too. He's kind of a sniper of a warrior.
Yeah. And so you touched on it a little bit, but I've also found that there's a lot of room for interpersonal growth in Killer Queen. Were there any specific stories where you or a teammate kind of went through a really transformative experience?
Yeah. So in the run up to BB2, there were a few incidents with like sexism and harassment that I was dealing with. Some of it was happening within KQ, some of it not. And I just knew that like I was really distracted and that I was feeling really like emotional about it. And so I decided to sort of take a risk, and I like leaned on my teammates. So we used to, before Saturday practices, we used to like sometimes have breakfast here actually, and just because I live a block away from Brewcade. And we would like either watch footage or just sort of talk through strategies as a team. And so I decided to open up to them about what I'd been going through and the ways that like I thought that maybe they could be allies to me, because I was becoming tired of just having to be like strong all the time. And I think I watched a big shift in all of my teammates when they heard my story, because I think like you hear about things that happen, and sometimes it's like it's not really personal, but I think when it's like happening to your own teammate and it could really impact like, you know, like whether I get like triggered at nationals, or like if something happened to me, you know, like I think they're now invested in it and they care about me as a friend. And so I got to see them all sort of like have this perspective shift through hearing like a personal story. And I remember after that, like Josh posted something like really heartwarming in one of the Slack channels about how he was basically apologizing for how he sometimes has viewed like sexism as an academic debate when it's also sort of an emotional discussion. And we're not really at the point where like we need to debate like the hypotheticals of like, well, like what if someone cries wolf about harassment or something, right? Because while those things exist, there's like a very real problem, and it's happening to women today in KQ, and our number one priority should be supporting these women. And his apology like really touched me. I felt like, and my other teammates, like they also took steps, like whenever, you know, whenever they were worried that like someone was giving me trouble, they would come in and be a buffer and be like, hey, how's it going? And sort of help me out of like situations. And I just noticed like a lot of effort, and I'm really thankful to like the guys in the SF scene in KQ have always been really supportive. And so, yeah, like while sexism and harassment do happen, I'm also really excited to see like the growth in people who realize there are really easy ways to be allies, and seeing the ways that that manifests is heartwarming. So
yeah, no, I'm really sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad SF has stepped up for you, at least some people at least.
Yeah.
We actually have a question from Josh B. Kind of on this topic. I'll read it word for word. What should we do as a community to make the environment more welcoming, and what can I do as an individual to support the women in my scene? Mm-hmm. And he tags on the end, how can he do this without infantilizing the women that he wants to support?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good call out. I think a lot more people than not have the desire to be allies, and I think that's the important thing to recognize. But I think he touches on a good point that sometimes like being an ally can come off as like patronizing, or sometimes like as a woman I just want to be treated like everyone else. Like I also like want to be in on the jokes as well, right? As long as they're not like hurtful or offensive. Yeah. And so I think sometimes the best thing you can do is every scene has women, and these women are going to speak up from time to time. They might mention like, hey, this guy that showed up to league night kind of drunk, like he touched me in a weird way. Or they might say like, hey, that conversation on Slack felt like a little bit sexist and makes me not want to talk, you know, in this channel on Slack or something. And when women speak up, you have to support them, because it takes a lot of effort and like emotional energy, and it's to say something. And so when that kind of gesture gets like rejected, I think that woman will probably not speak up again, and then you've lost sort of an important source of truth about how your community is doing. Yeah, so I think supporting the people that do speak up is a way to like give a voice to the women in the community without necessarily having to like go out of your way to like baby people. Like babying women or like being too easy on them in gameplay is also just going to hurt their growth, right? Yeah. So I think there are ways to be allies that is still really empowering for the person that you're trying to be an ally to.
Yeah, I actually had a few hesitations for asking that question. But one of them deals with principle of allyship, which is usually doing the research on your own instead of going to members of your community. And you touched on the emotional energy that it takes to really deal with, the actual confrontations themselves, and for allies to come to women now and ask, is this an additional weight to put on the women in our community?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make your question a little more broad, because I think women are just one aspect of a community, but I actually think there are a lot of groups I mean, Killer Queen is one of the best things about it is like how expansive and diverse the community is, and it's not just women that need allies, right? It's people of color, it's people with disabilities. There's a lot of different ways that we can be allies, and a lot of different people who need support. And so that said, if there's someone in the community that is maybe like underrepresented, I think you're right that it's a little bit unfair to always ask them to represent, like the entire group with just their voice. It can. Yeah, I know you've probably heard the term like emotional labor. Like I'm not the expert on feminism and sexism and like how to prevent it in a community, but I can offer one perspective. And I think it goes back to like when women do speak up, or when people do speak up, listen to them and support them. But also, like do the reading and do the research on your own. I think we can all, there's a lot of resources online about like how to be great allies, and a lot of it is just learning how to support without creating more of a burden for the person you're supporting.
Yeah. I mean, you say you're no expert, but I think I have to thank you though for a well-spoken discussion on this topic, for sure.
It matters.
But sorry to get away from the topic. You're queening. Are you going to keep queening after GDC?
Yeah.
For sure? 1,000%?
Well, unless like my arm like accidentally falls off or something after GD, or I guess like as long as my right arm remains intact, I will keep queening.
Well, so then I guess that begs the question, what SF drones are you looking to put on your team then?
Ooh. I am still looking for the next great drone. This is kind of a struggle that I think, well, I don't know, probably everyone has this struggle with growing communities. Like no one really like respects the value of a good drone and like how much work you can actually put into optimizing your drone play. But every time a new player joins, I teach them everything there is to know about the snail. And what I find is the people who become fucking amazing snail riders, they have such a great like learning mindset that they also become great like speed warriors or whatever they want to do. So yeah, I'm still looking for someone who genuinely loves the snail as much as I do. Like every time I run objectives or even just like drone gate control or, like in random pickup games, I'm literally just like cracking up the entire time. I think it gives me like an endorphin boost to like get drone bumps on people.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way, like 1,000%. I think I'm happiest playing this game when I'm running berries personally. So no dig on the snail or anything. But berries are definitely my preferred objective. I'm guessing yours is the snail, since you started the Snail Trails channel on Slack.
I like this. I love being a drone. I mean, if I could just not run an objective and actually just like do gate control, that's what I would do as a drone. Because they're wingless warriors and whatnot. But the reason I like
wingless warriors before. I like that.
The reason I like riding snail is because I think at very high level play, I don't think berries are the best win condition, or at least they're not one that like you should optimize your strategy for, although I think it happens accidentally all the time and it's very strategic. Like for example, when you're locked out, or especially when you're locked out but your drones have actually gotten speed or something, like I think berries can be game changing. But I think coming into a big tournament with berries as your starting strat probably doesn't work against like the top tier. And so I like snailing more than berrying simply for the fact that I like winning. But if we're just talking about like fun, and if I'm just playing on like fun pickup teams, like berries are way more fun. You get way more juke opportunities and you get way more parts of the map to like run around on, and a lot more opportunities for like just noticing that like a speedy is like running towards a gate as you're running to a berry hole and being like, actually, let me make a pit stop and like push this guy out and, call out to a warrior until they can come kill him. And then I'll go back to berry running.
Yeah. So I think we chatted a little bit beforehand. You think that the objective role or the drone role is just generally under optimized? Besides this heavy gate control, is there anything else that we can really push in the drone meta?
Yeah. So one thing that I get really frustrated about, or like if I'm queening and like someone is snailing badly, like I get so salty that like I sometimes die on accident. But So I think new players, they just run the snail from point A to point B and they call for help a lot. And then as they get a little bit better, they start learning how to sack. And so I think the most talked about meta is around snail sacking, and that's as far as the conversation usually goes, unless you're in the snail trails channel. But I actually think the most important skill that drones can work on when running snail is learning when not to sack. I've seen so many times where the snail is just given up for no reason. And I think it comes from like snails not feeling a sense of accountability for helping your team maintain gate control, right? Like usually, like if you're snailing and people are sacking left and right, but you have complete lockout, like you should never jump off of that snail. Similarly, like if you're snailing and you're about to go under a ledge, like don't sack. Your warrior's going to go down there and get themselves killed trying to save you. It's better to, eat when you're under a ledge, wait for the other team's warrior to come down and try to save their little rider, and then your team can just come in for the pincer. And yeah, I think there's a lot of cases where like not sacking is not appreciated as much as an art, and specifically understanding that like your number, like I think if snail riders understood that they're bait, they would play the game a lot more strategically. Like you're a piece of bait that you can lend to your teammates to like really help push the needle on the game.
No, for sure. And I hear that from Rob all the time too. It's just like, oh, I'm just the bait, just kill them when they come down. So yeah.
And also, I think a lot of snails don't recognize the potential that they have for gate control. Like, if you're on night map and you're on the elastic band, for example, night map is a great place to run snail because it's the only map in which like the center of your vision is like the center of the map. So you have the chance to see what's going on at a higher level when you're snailing on night map. And that means that like, when you see a drone running towards a gate and you're on that elastic band, you can actually beat the running drones to whatever gate they're going to and like get in a bump or two.
Yeah.
I think like on Dusk, for example, there's so many opportunities to either block that center gate or to block the speed gates if you're just paying attention and getting ready to like bounce for your life. But I think those opportunities are kind of missed as well. And they're not really included in like what you teach new players to do as snail riders.
Yeah. And it has such huge impact. I mean, you stop one or two warriors or one or two speeds in the game. There's only probably 20 warriors. Well, I don't know. I don't know the numbers on this actually. Probably 30 or 40 warriors tops any given game. That's a pretty big impact for sure.
And you're also, anytime you see a 50-50, by the second bounce, right, that they're just going to keep stupidly 50-50. You can go over there and break the tie without anyone expecting it from you. I mean, I think that part of the meta, at least people are finally starting to recognize it. But if every snail rider saw looking for those opportunities as a primary goal, chances are they would blindside a lot of players and have a big impact.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of things that you understand that others don't, what's your other secret sauce? I hear you do something interesting with your hands when you're playing.
So when I first joined Killer Queen, I think I mentioned this before. I got so addicted to it that I was like literally playing 7 days a week, and I was closing out Brewcade like most nights. I was so addicted.
Yeah.
And I started, weirdly enough, like most people, their tapping fingers get injured, but in my case, it was my left arm, like my joystick arm. It started hurting so badly that I like had to go to the doctor, and they're like, you need to stop playing this game. You're getting like a repetitive strain injury. And so that like wasn't an option for me because I'm an addict. So instead I just learned how to play one-handed using my right hand since it was not in pain.
Yeah.
So yeah, up until BB2, I was a one-handed player. I would just like put my other arm like up on the cabinet and like stretch it out. And I would take out my other hand only when I needed to get up as a warrior, like in emergency situations. Yeah. And so that helped me avoid injury.
Well, I feel like that begs the question, which arm is falling off while you queen? Or are they both going to fall off while you queen?
Well, now, so I've worked a lot on my posture. So I actually don't have the issues with my left arm. Before, I think it's because I was like leaning on my left elbow. So I spent a lot of time like kind of changing the position that I play from. And now, just like a normal human being, I'm just starting to feel the like tapping pain in my right arm, which I hear is like a normal feeling. So I'm just managing that accordingly.
Yeah, it hurts and then it stops hurting because it just hurts all the time. So you get used to it. So then I guess the last bit, words of wisdom. What's important to you, KQ? Just close us out, Andi.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is the people. Like, it's a fun game, but it's at the same time, like you're spending hours of your life like hitting a button, but you're spending that time with people and focusing on those relationships and making sure that like the friendships are more important than winning is, that's all you can do. Because I wouldn't want to win tournaments if it meant that like we stopped having fun.
Yeah. And I think that's a great note to close on. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sure.
And I want to wish you the best of luck at GDC, unless you play me,
Thank
and then you're going down.
Bye.
All right. Can't wait to see you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into The Hot Take. We'll see you next week.
Bye.